Thank you, James. So, I will assure you that if I bomb this class, it's not from lack of study. It's just that I'm not very smart, so you'll have to just bear with me on that. Larry did a great... It's funny because this morning I said, watch Larry or Tyler do a lesson on Acts 24 and just ruin my whole class. But Larry's lesson was amazing because some of the things he talks about is Paul gets in trouble when he starts talking about the resurrection, and that's what always makes everybody mad. And then here Larry does a whole lesson about it. So Larry's lesson was great timing on this part of Acts. And the beauty of Acts is we see the apostles through the Gospels that are, they're timid, they're kind of confused on what's going on, and I mean, it's understandable if you put yourself into their shoes. It's easy to read about something that's already happened and understand and think, why didn't they get it? But, when you're there, it's always a whole different story when it's coming to you for the first time. And, the apostles were often confused and timid, and then Christ dies, Acts comes, and they step up in a huge way and do all the things that, that Christ had been teaching them, and just the way they stepped up and did what they were supposed to do. It's like Larry even read about Acts 1, and then, at around 13 or whatever, it says, why are you standing there gazing? I'm coming again. And it's more or less, go get to work. And sure enough, that's what they do when he passes away. And, that tells you the power of what we're studying, the Bible and Christ and God, is if you watch... if you know anything about the military or police, when they want to go after like a gang, or if the military wants to go after a leader of another country, they might pick off some of the underlings in the group and gain information from them, but they're going straight for the leader. They're going right for the leader because typically, not always, but typically, if you take the leader out, it really causes confusion and takes the whole group down or the whole gang down or the country or whatever down. And Christ died over 2,000 years ago. And here we still are worshiping Him, and His Word is still among us and strong. And it's our duty and job as Christians to do what we're learning in Acts. We're the ones that are to be carrying on His Word, and we're the ones to be teaching the gospel, just like they did, 2,000 years ago, or however many years it was. So it's what we're learning, is a lot of it is like our template on how we should be teaching people and how we should be out, is trying to save souls and teach people so many things. And so it's a very refreshing book, a very informative book, and that's all I got. Class is over. So let's start at 24, or verse 20, chapter 24, verse 1. Now, after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, which is not the Ananias, obviously, that was with Paul, that baptized Paul, or Saul, came down with the elders, and a certain orator named Tertullus. These gave evidence to the governor against Paul. And so, it's not particularly that Tertullus, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, was a lawyer. I mean, he might have had a little bit of law degree with him, who knows, but he was very eloquent in speech, and that's why they had hired him to give this presentation before Felix. So he starts in, and when he was called upon, Tertullus began his accusation, saying, seeing that through you, he's buttering Felix up. He was probably, Dale Carnegie courses were in play even back then, where you build somebody up if you're wanting to, you kind of build them up and then you present your case to them. Seeing that through you we enjoy great peace and prosperity is being brought to this nation by your foresight. We accept it always and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness. Nevertheless, it is not to be tedious to you any further. I beg you to hear by your courtesy a few words from us. So here he is. He's going to present the case before them. And for we have found this man to be a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of Nazarites. He even tried to profane the temple, and we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. But the commander Lysias came by and with great violence took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. By examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him. And the Jews also assented, maintaining that these were so. So back to 2. He starts in and he's, pumping Felix up and telling him how great he is. And he starts in 5. For we have found this man a plague, a creator of dissension among all Jews throughout the world, a ringleader of the sect of Nazarenes. What does that mean? Have we seen that before in the Bible anywhere? What does that mean? A sect of the Nazarenes. Does anybody know? Well, it's Jewish Christians that Jesus of Nazareth, so they're being called a sect of the Nazarenes, so they're followers of Christ is what they are. And so we see that for the first time. That's not a dirty name to be called. It's what you are. It's what we are too. But how was he a plague? What is he talking about? Was he causing dissension in the temple? Was he the ringleader? A lot of us, we see Paul when he steps on the scene, and it is all go when Paul gets there, and that's just the way he works, and he's not the ringleader, but a lot of Acts is about Paul and his conversion. But they're just throwing things out there. Yes.
Well, just like we see Satan telling half-truths, these things are half-true. The way Christianity was seen by the government as a sect of the Jews. And they had a rule that said no new religions. So staying a sect of the Jews, Christians were somewhat protected, but once they became fully understood and isolated, they were persecuted by the government. Paul was not the ringleader. He was a spark plug. It was not Paul's people who rioted. It was the Jews. But he did make comments to set them off.
Very good. Thank you. So yes, if telling the truth and preaching the gospel is causing dissension, then so be it. We have to do that. When we think of causing dissension, we think of the same thing they do. We think of a member maybe, starting up trouble and stirring up. Well, that's what it was to them. Is him being there, and he even tried to profane the temple. A lot of these are questions in our book, but how are they assuming that he was trying to profane the temple? What was it they were saying there?
They saw him in the city with the Greek Trophimus, and they assumed he had taken him into the temple.
That's correct. Let's see. And then here's my favorite, where, we're supposed to be guilty until proven, innocent until proven guilty is what it is in the laws. But so oftentimes we're guilty until proven innocent. And that's what was going on here, and that's usually the case. And so the biggest one is where the commander, in 7, the biggest fib was the commander Lysias came by and with great violence took him out of our hands. So what really happened at that time? What was going on that the commander had to come?
They were beating Paul.
That's right. They were beating him and trying to kill him. And the commander got word of it, comes along, saves Paul and puts him in 2 sets of chains or whatever. And here he's making it out like, the commander just comes in and starts beating everybody up and saves him. So he's stirring it towards his direction. And I like this in 8. He says, commanding his accusers to come to you, by examining him yourself, you may ascertain that all these things which we accuse him of. So he's telling Felix, you just ask him these questions, and the answers he's going to give is just going to prove all these to be true. He's saying, examine him. You'll see that it's true. So we get to 9. And the Jews are all agreeing. You can just see them all up there. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And it gets to 10. Then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do more cheerfully answer for myself. So Paul is acknowledging that he knows who Felix is, and that he's the governor and somebody of importance. And he says, because you may, in 11, ascertain that it is more, and I have never said that word more in the last 2 weeks I've been studying this in my whole life. I don't know if I've ever used that word before now. That is more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. So he's setting the fact that this was only 12 days ago. It wasn't like nowadays where you'll watch a show and somebody will get put in jail for murder, and they'll do the trial 3 years later, before this person ever goes to trial. And so often by then, things have happened, people have died, witnesses have died, your memory changes. If you hear a story so many times of what happened, even though that didn't happen, maybe that's what you're going to think. So he's saying just 12 days ago, this happened. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone or inciting a crowd, either in the synagogues or in the city. Nor can they prove the things which they now accuse me. So he's saying they're making all these statements, but they can't prove it because there's no evidence of what they're saying. Maybe in their mind they're thinking that that's all true, but they can't prove it by him. But this I confess to you, that according to the way, this is 14, which they call a sect, I so worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. So in 14, as Kurt mentioned, the way. And what again is the way? Who remembers? Are we in the way today? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, again, this is the first time the way is mentioned in the Bible. And so we're still of the way today. And he says, God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Not things, not some of the things, not the important things, but all things. And that's something we need to remember, when we're studying the Bible, is we're to understand and do all of it. Not just what the convenient part is, not the easy part. It's got to be all of it. Any comments on that? I haven't asked for comments. So. Any comments? No, I know I'm not that thorough, so y'all can speak up anytime you want. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and unjust. And this was great when Larry starts his lesson, and it's all about this. So this is all where the contention really is with the Jews and them at Paul. For one, he has hope. We're all to have hope. I mean, if we're studying and if we don't believe what we're studying, it's sad. I mean, we're to have hope in God, hope in Jesus, hope for eternal salvation. Yes.
Well, it's kind of ironic anyway, because the Sadducees and Pharisees already fought over this anyway.
Yes.
Because you had one side that believed in the resurrection, the other side didn't. But now they're going to blame Paul. See, Paul's doing that.
Exactly.
Except they're just lying.
Yes.
They're using this orator, is what they are,
Mm-hmm.
and to tell us he's probably working with what we think of as a law firm now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Felix was a mean, and he was a very vicious man, and he ruled in a rough way. And he was also very reckless in a lot of things he'd done. He was just, most of the people that went before Felix, they died.
Wow.
So if you would think of that, they're trying to bring Paul before him without anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see the miraculous here almost.
Mm-hmm.
It gets away from here. But I just find it ironic that here they're pleading this case saying he's bringing up the resurrection. Paul is mentioning this. They're upset, and he knows exactly what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe
He's brilliant.
He's smarter than they are,
Yes.
of course. Well, the truth is always smarter
Mm-hmm.
than a lie.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just bringing this up. Well, they're getting upset because I bring up the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And that is bringing discourse. Because as soon as you bring that up between the
Yes.
Sadducees and Pharisees, that's what they're going to start fighting about.
Exactly.
Every single time.
And he picked up on that in the last previous verse or chapter and brought in the Pharisees on his side. Got them all riled up to be with him. Very good. Any other comments? Yes.
I think also it's pretty cool to see that Paul isn't really, he's only concerned about the truth and preaching his resurrection, because all these false things that they're bringing up about him, which is what typically is what we're afraid of when we're not talking, and he just shuns them away, but that's not really the problem. We can't prove it. This is the issue. And he brings it back to it, and I think that's where he can find his confidence and his boldness in preaching, is he's not concerned about these false things that they may say about him, and a lot of times when we go study with people, it's oh, you think I'm going to hell, oh, you hate me. It's no, I'm preaching you the truth, and I think that's what gives him this confidence and this boldness to do it. He doesn't spend all his time trying to argue all those things that they're saying about him. He goes, hey, you can't prove them. This is what I do. This is why it really matters. Bringing it back to him, kind of going, yeah, good luck trying that, but this is true.
He's not concerned with what they think about him. And that's, like you said, something we need to remember, that, when we're teaching somebody the truth and they reject it, it's not us they're rejecting. They're rejecting God's word. They're rejecting God when they reject us. And Paul is never concerned with himself. It's always, he's got the right attitude. And he says he has hope in 15. Was there any more comments or anything? Yes.
Just to piggyback on that is, now I'm losing my comment, but that's the importance of knowing that our worth and value is in God's eyes, not men's eyes. If Paul, in any which way, got what men thought of him, he'd probably be turned the other way. These Jews are calling him the ringleader, a plague, a creator of dissension. That doesn't sound like something you want to be called. If you value that, you'd probably turn away from what you're doing, but he doesn't value that.
Mm-hmm.
He values what God thinks of him and how God values him.
Exactly. And that's the way we should all be. We should not worry about what the world thinks of us. We should just do what's right no matter what the conditions are. And the outcome's going to be. The temporary outcome. Sometimes we jeopardize ourselves and maybe even the truth by just temporary relief, not realizing that's going to affect the true outcome on life.
The main problem these Jews had with the way, this sect of the Nazarenes, is Jesus Christ. That was the problem. The one that they had crucified and put on the cross and killed.
Mm-hmm.
These men were eyewitnesses of his resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And they were turning people to Jesus. And that was jeopardizing their Jewish faith and all the things
Mm-hmm.
that they had believed, and even Gentiles being brought in. And that was more than they could stand. And that's the problem with the Jews today. For the most part, Jesus is not the Messiah.
That is correct. I was going to say
They're
that.
still looking for the
Yes.
house sad.
Thousands of years later.
They're still looking for the Messiah, and they missed him.
Absolutely.
He's already coming.
Yeah. And that is sad. And that was a point I was wanting to make too, is that thousands of years later, they still believe the same thing. It's just amazing and it is. It's something that should make you sad. And also on 15, he says, also accept that there will be how many resurrections of both the dead and the just and unjust? A resurrection. And that's what Larry spoke about a lot today, but there's just going to be one. And we have of the just and the unjust. We don't see here that there's going to be, a kingdom set up down here and you're going to get a second chance after 1,000 years or whatever it might be. We see that there's going to be one, and that he's going to judge the just and the unjust. Not give us all a second chance and let us do. That'd be amazing. You could live this life the way you want and then have a second opportunity to turn it around. But like Larry said, when you die, it's final. How you lived your life is final. And there's two attitudes, being a Christian has its difficulties, but it has its rewards here on this earth too. There's 100 and something of them sitting right here that are such a blessing to each and every one of us every day that we can turn to, that are brothers and sisters. The people you've surrounded yourself with is such a blessing. The hope of eternal life is such a blessing. Oftentimes, it's just going to be a Christian, and staying a strong Christian is as hard as you want to make it. However hard you want to make it and how difficult you want to make it is exactly how hard it's going to be. That sounds simple, and it is oversimplifying it to a degree, but it's how hard do you want to make it? Do you want to struggle every day with it, with the sins of the world, or do you want to turn them away and just do what God says and live the way God wants you to? So we got one resurrection, and that is what this whole thing, the reason Paul is in prison and in trouble is because of this. It's not all that other stuff. It's that they're planning being a plague and creator. That's just kind of what they're throwing out there. But this is the real reason he's in jail, because they're teaching against what he believes. He says in 16, this being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense towards God and men. So, with that, is our conscience our guide? No. What I like in this is he has a conscience with a qualifier in there. You know, it's without offense. You know, he's trying to live without offense to the Word, and what he knows is his conscience. Not, let's let my conscience be the guide over the Word, what the Word is. You know, so yes, we are to, you know, live with a clear conscience and have a good conscience. But we're also to know what our conscience is supposed to be parallel with, you know, which is the Word of God, and do that. And make that your conscience, and make sure you are doing what's right. And men. It says towards God and men. And then 17, after many days I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation. So what was that? What was his alms and offerings? What's he talking about there? Is there anywhere else in the Bible we can see about what he's talking about in there? And in Romans he talks about to minister to the saints and to make a contribution for the poor among the saints. So he's bringing them, you know, whatever it be, food, money, whatever it is. He's bringing that to them. In 17, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a mop or with tumult, which tumult's like just loud noises and so on from there. And what is purified? No, I'm really asking. Somebody answer me. What you believe that purified means, when he's being purified?
He's gone through the fire.
I'm sorry?
He's gone through the fire. Like when they get the stuff off, the metals off the top, they scrape that top off.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been through the fire, and now he's been made into a hard person. Not hard person, but he's been through the fire. I know what I'm trying to say, we can't get it out.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else got an answer?
Go to the fire to burn off the
Yeah.
non-gold.
Mm-hmm. Are we to do that? I mean, not physically, you know, but we're to be purified. We, as Christians today, how do we purify ourselves? Through study?
We're going to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be tried. Romans 12 talks about renewing, every day is a sacrifice, renewing your mind. Every day.
Mm-hmm.
We do it every day.
Absolutely. Kurt.
One of the accusations against Paul was that he had defamed or profaned, the temple. It says that he was found in the temple, purified, which partly has to do with the fact that he is a Jew, and partly is, if I'm not mistaken, the Jews of that day had somewhat of a ceremonial washing that they did when, or either as or before they went into the temple. Mm-hmm. So he's also answering the idea that he profaned the temple by bringing in a Gentile, which wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, that he himself profaned it, which wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me like he's answering that without any crowd or tumult. He didn't bring in a bunch of people to riot. It was the Jews that rioted.
Mm-hmm.
Scott,
Yes.
what Kurt's referring to was back in Acts 21,
Mm-hmm.
26 and 27. He's first saying, I didn't desecrate it. Not only did I not desecrate the temple, I was purifying and 6 of chapter 21, it says, Then Paul took the men, and the next day he purified himself. This is a recount of what happened. Purified himself along with them, and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled, and an offering presented for each one of them. So I think that's what it's in reference.
Yeah.
Scott.
Yes.
Also in that very next verse, he's talking about how when the 7 days were almost ended, they saw him in there, and then he got here.
Mm-hmm.
So they were just trying to blame him for saying that you looked past the days, you were
Right.
But,
Yes.
but it was almost ended, but it wasn't.
Yeah. There was a ritual that they
No
went
lie,
through
in other words.
back then that was a purification, and yes, yeah, they're just trying to throw things out there and get pretty much everybody riled up. And you know, if it's not that he has to be found guilty, because they're wanting to just kill him. You know, we see where you know, in the previous verses where the 40 of them said, we're not going to eat or sleep or drink, or was it eat and drink? I don't remember about sleep, but whether until we find him dead. You know, they were going to kill him. They really don't care if he's found guilty or innocent. They just want him dead and out of the way. And they've tried to do that, and of course, God intervenes in it and brought him here. 19, thou to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me, or else let those who are here themselves say, if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council, unless it is for one statement which I cried out standing among them concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged to you this day. You know, it's back. He's going back to like the court system where you can't just go up and say, you know, I know he killed her. You know, if you're a witness and they say they want to know who, what, or why. How do you know that? Did you see it? Who told you that he did? You can't just make the statement. You know, I know he did. You've got to have proof. And he's saying they don't have any proof for all this. The reason I'm here is concerning the resurrection of the dead, that I am being judged to you this day. So that is the main reason he is there, is because they're not. He's not teaching what they believe. Any comments, anything on that? But when Felix heard these things, having a more accurate knowledge of, here it comes again, the way, he adjourned the proceedings and said, when Lysias, the commander, comes down, I will make a decision on your case. So Felix was more educated in the way than the others that were listening. And he knew a little bit about it. And we can see later that he was interested in it, you know, and was curious to hear what it had to say. And so I'm assuming, you know, when Lysias, the commander, comes down, I will make a decision on your case. Do we know that within 2 years he comes down? It's like, why didn't he ever come down? I mean, did they obviously... Looks like they didn't want this case heard, because we see later that, you know, Paul's in there for 2 more years after this. So he obviously doesn't make it down, or if he did, Felix didn't make a decision on the case. In 23, so he commanded the centurion to keep Paul and let him have liberty, and told him not to forbid any of his friends to provide for or visit him. And as James mentioned, you know, he was mean man. You know, he ruled with iron thumb. But he gave Paul some liberty. You know, you're going to stay here. We're not going to keep anybody from coming to visit you. You know, so he could have all of his visitors. He could do... he could spread the gospel not only in prison, the people that come to him. He could spread the gospel to them and have them spread the gospel. So, you know, Felix wasn't limiting him in that direction. And after some days, when Felix came with his wife, Drusilla, who was Jewish, he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Jesus. So here he comes and wants to know about, he wants to talk to Paul about these things. So he's curious. He's listening. What do you think it means when he wanted to hear the things concerning the faith in Christ? What do you think?
I think he wanted to talk about, generalities and let's have a talk about this, and that's kind of the comfortable level of discussion about that. But it's kind of the same thing whenever we talk to our friends and other people who are Christians. Sometimes where there's certain areas that you can talk and it's comfortable and everybody's okay with that. But whenever you start getting to those things that are talked about in Hebrews 4:12 about the Word of God being sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing as far as the division of the soul and spirit, both joints and marrow, when you get to those things that really cut and divide and are pointed and address those things that make people uncomfortable, that's when you start to lose people that aren't really interested in actually knowing about it, and that kind of seems what Felix was doing.
And when you do that, are you judging them by your opinion when you're teaching somebody that? No. It's the Word that's judging them. You're teaching them, and then the Word is judging them. It's pricking them either in a good way or in a bad way. And so he reasoned about righteousness, self-control. This is the things that Jason's talking about. It wasn't just all, flowers and chocolate. He was telling them about righteousness, self-control, the judgment to come. So he got enough information and was firm enough that Felix was afraid and answered, "Go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you." I'm sure there's others in the Bible, but right here, to me, that is the saddest commentary in the whole Bible. Just hearing it, knowing it, understanding it, but not wanting to do it. And just, come here at a more convenient time, and we'll talk about it. And, there was other things, side notes, that, when he's talking about self-control, I was going to get deeper into this, but it looks like we're flashing lights. But, some of our morals on self-control, and one of the history parts on this is that Drusilla had been married before to a king, and she had a kind of an insignificant king, and she had stopped that marriage and divorced and married Felix. So maybe he knew that, or maybe Paul didn't, but was just talking about morals and adultery and all that, and that could have been some of the things. But whatever it was, it made him afraid. And is that all right? Is it okay to be afraid of?
It's justified. That's why God built us this way.
That is correct. Yeah,
He gave us that emotion so that when something is endangering us, then we can do something about it.
That is correct. You're not to live in fear every day where you're scared of everything, but fear also helps you understand a lot of things. I don't want this to happen to me. I'm scared of that, so I'm going to do this. And that's what, if the lesson Larry didn't give you some fear, yes.
The fear of God is the beginning of all knowledge. So.
That is correct. We are to have fear. But go away, and he does call him back. We see, meanwhile, he also hoped that money would be given by Paul that he might release him. Therefore he sent him for him more often. He conversed with him more. And then you have, maybe so many people want to say that that's all he wanted was a bribe. He just kept calling Paul back. It says he also hoped that money. There was two hopes there, or two things there. He was hearing the word, and he was also hoping he would get a bribe out of the deal, which that's not a good thing. I'm just saying there was also, at that point, he was hearing, he was calling for Paul. He was gaining a lot of information from him, because it says, therefore he sent for him more often and conversed with him. And then, what a letdown after all this. In 27, after 2 years, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix, wanting to do the Jews a favor, left Paul bound. So all this, of course, is God's will and in His control, but all this for 2 years, and then he leaves Paul in prison. So any last comments right quick?
So I was going to say just real quick that it's evident here that faith in Jesus Christ, in fact, Jason's point is a call for action. He talks about faith in Jesus. He talks about righteousness and self-control. Those are things that people aren't necessarily willing to do. There's lots of our friends that say they have faith. They believe in the sense that Jesus is the Son of God, but they're not willing to exercise self-control or exercise imputed righteousness as the Bible defines it.
Faith without works. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you all very much.